Well, well, well. Look who they can't stop talking about. You. You walked in, and you didn't raise your voice. You didn't throw a tantrum. You didn't beg for attention. You breathed, and the room forgot how to. Let's talk about that. You ever realize how the same people who used to clown you, ignore you, dismiss you, are now rehearsing your name like it's a trending topic? You didn't ask for a spotlight, but they handed it to you anyway. Because silence, that's power most people will never understand. And yours. It wasn't just silence, it was surgical. You dropped one sentence, maybe just a glance, and it hit them right where their ego lives. They felt it in places they didn't know could hurt. Suddenly, all the noise, all the group chat drama, all the backhanded side eyes, gone, vanished. You didn't scream, you didn't flex, you didn't threaten, you just existed louder than their lies. See, people get loud when they scared. They talk over you, they group up, they giggle, they gaslight. But when someone who's actually built different shows up, they get quiet, uncomfortable, awkward, and they start looking at each other like, did they just say what I think they said? Yeah, you did. And it wasn't even your loudest. You know what's funny? They were waiting for you to fold. They were counting on you to get nervous, second-guess yourself, over-explain, maybe even apologize. But you didn't flinch. You gave them clarity without chaos. You told your truth, and then you let the room marinate in the aftershock. They say you silenced the room? Nah. You reminded them what presence feels like. Because your power isn't in being liked. It's in being felt. You ain't here to be cute background noise. You ain't here to blend in. You are the uncomfortable silence people didn't see coming. The line break between what they say they believe and what they actually do. You were never meant to be accepted. You were meant to interrupt. And that's exactly what you did. You walked in, and every little passive-aggressive snake in the room had to check themselves. Wait, did they hear what I said last week? Are they calling me out right now? Are they talking to me? Maybe, maybe not. But if your heart's pacing, if your palms are sweaty, if your ego's squirming, then yeah, it was you. That's the gift of being the one who sees clearly. You don't even have to say names. The guilty always speak up first. And look at you now. The one they used to overlook is now the one they can't stop watching. You're the post they subtweet. You're the message they screenshot. You're the story they all analyze like it's written in code. Because they know. You know. You shut the whole group down, not by dragging people through the mud, but by holding up a mirror. You made them sit with themselves. You didn't get lucky. You didn't stumble into strength. You earned that silence. You earned that discomfort. Every moment you bit your tongue. Every time you swallowed rage just to keep peace. Every room you dimmed your light in so other people could feel tall. You paid for this moment with interest. And now that you've tasted what it feels like to have the floor go still after you speak, ain't no going back. Because deep down, you were never scared of being loud. You were scared of what would happen when people realized how true your words hit. But they know now. They saw it. The shift, the panic, the way people started rewording their whole sentences the minute you looked up. They ain't got nothing to say now. Because everything they'd usually say, the sarcasm, the fake, just kidding, the twisted narratives, none of it works anymore. They tried to box you in. Now you outgrew the box and burned it. They wanted the old you, the one who let shit slide, the one who laughed things off, the one who didn't want drama. But the truth is, they were the drama. You just stopped playing your part. You're not the quiet one anymore. You're the one they're scared to poke. You're the one that makes the room shift when you speak. And you know what that makes you? Dangerous. Not because you hurt people, but because you heal too loudly for their broken systems to keep up. You are the tension. You are the plot twist. You are the reason they double-check their tone now. They didn't expect you to wake up. They didn't expect you to show up with backbone, with poise, with receipts. They didn't expect silence to be so loud. They didn't expect you to be the echo they couldn't bury. And now they're stuck. You said one thing, just one truth, and their whole illusion came crashing down. They never hated you. They hated your clarity. They hated your power. They hated that they couldn't spin your words, couldn't control your tone, couldn't fix your delivery. You didn't make them uncomfortable by being wrong. You made them uncomfortable by being right. And the part that haunts them the most, you didn't even raise your voice. And the part that haunts them the most, you didn't even raise your voice. You didn't need a mic. You didn't need backup. You didn't need a whole speech prepared. You were the message, and they felt it in their gut before they even understood it in their heads. That's why they went quiet. Not out of respect, out of recognition. Recognition that the one they joked about, the one they downplayed, the one they tried to box in, just dismantled their whole illusion with a calm face and unshakable energy. And it's killing them. Not because you embarrassed them, but because you didn't even try to. You weren't aiming to win an argument. You were just done pretending. That's what's dangerous about you now. You're not performing anymore. You're not bending. You're not laughing just to keep the peace. You're not playing small so they can feel big. You're done negotiating your identity. You're showing up exactly as you are. No filter, no script, no fake humility. And they don't know how to handle it. Because the version of you they rehearsed in their minds was quiet, agreeable, easy to dismiss. But this version is too aware, too grounded, too undeniable. And the second you realized you didn't need their validation to be powerful, everything changed. You started walking different. You started speaking with weight. You started making eye contact like you see through people now. Because you do. You see through the fake support, the forced smiles, the subtle jabs hidden in jokes. You see the way they twist their tone when you're not around. You see the way they shrink when your energy enters the room, not because you're threatening, but because you're transparent. You're the one who stopped pretending. You're the one who no longer trades your silence for belonging. You're the one who sat through the awkward tension and didn't rush to fix it. And while they were busy whispering your name, thinking you wouldn't hear, you were sharpening your self-respect like a weapon they couldn't see. They thought you'd stay soft forever. They thought you'd keep absorbing their mess like it was your job. They thought you'd always choose peace, even when it meant betraying yourself. But they forgot. Peace without truth. That's not peace, that's submission. And you're done submitting. Your voice doesn't shake anymore. Your hands don't sweat when you speak your truth. Your worth isn't up for debate in a group chat. You shut the room down because you walked in with wholeness. Because your energy said, I know what I bring. I know who I am. I don't need to fight. I just need to exist. And the wildest part? You still haven't said everything. They think they've seen the final form, but they haven't even witnessed the full voltage yet. You're still unfolding, still charging up, still learning how to carry all this fire without burning yourself in the process. And they feel that. They feel the fact that you're only getting more composed, more surgical, more strategic. You're not clapping back. You're playing the long game because you understand now the loudest person ain't the most powerful. The one being talked about is, and you're the topic. You're the name that won't leave their mouth. You're the energy that haunts their silence. They say you shut the room down. Nah, you reset the entire frequency, and you reset it without raising your hand, without making a scene, without needing permission. That's what's got 'em pacing, because they used to be fluent in your silence. They thought they could read you, manage you, predict your moves. But this version of you, you're unreadable, unbothered, unreachable by the usual games, and that unsettles people who survive off control. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't flinch anymore, someone who doesn't chase approval, doesn't soften their truth to be liked, doesn't shrink to make the insecure feel safe. You've become the kind of presence that exposes weakness by simply existing in your truth. Not because you're loud, because you're clear. Clear about your worth, clear about your standards, clear about who gets access and who gets locked out, no explanation needed, and that clarity, it's louder than any comeback. You're not fighting for space anymore. You are the space. People orbit you different when they realize you're not afraid to walk away mid-sentence if peace gets compromised. You're not dramatic, you're done. Done entertaining nonsense, done babysitting egos, done apologizing for how much you've grown. You're not even mad. That's what's breaking them. You're calm, you're grounded, you're not reacting, you're watching. And when someone like you stops reacting, people panic. Because silence from someone who used to care too much, that silence hits like a verdict. They know they messed up. They just don't know when they lost you, because you left quietly, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Now all they have is stories. Remember when they used to be cool with us? Remember when they never used to speak up? Remember when they laughed at everything? Yeah, those days are dead. You're not holding your tongue anymore, and you're not explaining your evolution to people committed to misunderstanding you. You walk into rooms now, and your silence feels like thunder. People straighten up, second-guess their tone, run back conversations in their heads, wondering if you caught that. You caught it. You catch everything these days, but you're too elevated to entertain it. You're too focused to be pulled back into petty cycles. You're choosing presence over performance, truth over comfort, power over people-pleasing. And the irony? The quieter you became, the louder your impact got. The less you said, the more they talked. The less you responded, the more they unraveled. Because deep down, they know. They were never equipped to stand next to someone who doesn't fear solitude. Someone who doesn't need a crowd to feel real. Someone who doesn't flinch when the energy gets awkward, who sits in the tension and lets it burn without breaking eye contact. You're not part of their noise anymore. You're the one frequency they can't replicate. You're the standard they weren't ready for. You're the boundary they didn't think you'd have the nerve to set. You're the presence that exposes what they've been hiding under fake smiles and forced confidence. You're the mirror that makes liars fidget. You're the energy they can't fake, dodge, or ignore. And the wildest part, you didn't even try to be any of that. You weren't chasing some title. You weren't angling to be the one everybody's watching. You were just tired. Tired of swallowing your truth. Tired of pretending not to notice the shade. Tired of laughing at ST that wasn't funny. Tired of playing it cool while people kept crossing invisible lines you never gave them permission to cross. You stopped entertaining crumbs and they called you difficult. You stopped absorbing blame that wasn't yours, and suddenly you were the villain. You started answering in facts instead of feelings, and they said you had an attitude. Nah, you just woke up to who you really are. You realized you're not obligated to be emotionally accessible to people who weaponize your kindness. You realized that your silence was never peace. It was suppression. That your ability to tolerate chaos wasn't strength. It was survival. And you're not in survival mode anymore. You've got receipts for every moment you stayed quiet while they disrespected you with a smile. Every moment you brushed off the gut feeling because maybe you were overthinking it. Every time you stayed loyal to people who would have sold you for applause. That version of you, the one who tolerated it all. You don't owe them an explanation for why that person doesn't exist anymore. They buried that version with their own hands when they mistook your stillness for softness. When they underestimated your intelligence because you didn't correct them in front of the group. When they laughed at your silence, thinking you were too slow to catch the subtext. But you caught it. You always did. You just knew the game wasn't worth playing. You weren't quiet because you were clueless. You were quiet because you were calculating. And when you finally moved, you moved like someone who understood their value. Not loud, not petty, not thirsty for revenge. Just clear. Clear that your energy ain't a community resource. Clear that your presence is earned, not expected. Clear that not everyone who claps when you speak is clapping because they respect you. Some are just scared of being the next one exposed. You're not the one they used to talk over anymore. You're the one they stutter around. You're the one they keep bringing up in rooms you're no longer even in. Not because they miss you, but because you're still the standard they can't meet. Your name carries weight now, not from ego, not from performance, but from truth. Because you said what needed to be said. Because you stood when you could have folded. Because you held eye contact when it got tense. Because you let the silence speak louder than anything they could have clapped back with. And you let it speak with precision. The kind of precision that cuts through all the fluff, all the ego, all the little power plays they thought they had mastered. You didn't come to the table with theatrics. You came with energy that couldn't be manipulated. And that scared the hell out of people who only know how to operate in chaos when they think they're in control of it. You didn't match their noise. You made their noise irrelevant. You didn't throw shade back. Your presence flipped the whole climate. You didn't roast anyone. You exposed everything without raising your volume a single decibel. And what they'll never admit out loud, that moment you spoke, whether it was one sentence or one stare, it redefined the entire room. People who were laughing too hard before suddenly went quiet. People who always had something slick to say couldn't find their words. People who used to interrupt you mid-thought didn't even breathe too loud. Because there's a shift that happens when a real one stops biting their tongue. And you brought that shift like a thunderclap wrapped in calm. You didn't walk in swinging. You walked in knowing who you are, knowing what you're worth, knowing what you're never tolerating again. That's what shut everything down. Not some viral comeback, not some over-the-top takedown, just truth. Delivered without hesitation, with posture, with eyes that didn't blink. You didn't flinch because you'd already survived worse. You weren't afraid of the room because you'd already learned how to sit in silence with your own pain. And that teaches you more than 100 fake friendships ever could. You came through clean, no gossip, no pettiness, no drama, just presence. And that's a language only the real ones can understand. The rest, they panic in that kind of clarity because they know they can't twist it, they can't spin it, they can't compete with it. That's why they're talking about you when you're not even there. Because your absence is heavier than their entire performance. Because your name rings louder than their groupthink. Because what you did wasn't just shut down a conversation. You exposed a dynamic, a power imbalance, a whole culture of fake laughs and passive-aggressive shade that couldn't survive the presence of someone who wasn't scared to just be real. You didn't just silence the room, you stripped it of its masks, of its performative kindness, of its fragile little hierarchies built on who's the loudest, not who's the truest. And that silence that followed you, it wasn't awkward, it was sacred, it was a reset. A reminder that real power never needs to shout, never needs to explain itself twice, never needs to check who's watching. And that reset? It hit every single person in the room different. The insecure ones took it personal. The loud ones got quiet. The fake supporters started over-explaining. You didn't say names, but they heard themselves in every word. That's the thing about truth. When it lands, it don't need a label. The guilty self-identify. You weren't even looking for revenge. You weren't trying to win. You were just done pretending the room was whole when you knew it was built on cracks. You walked in with silence, and the silence exposed the fractures. And the crazy part? You weren't even at full volume yet. That was just your calm clarity doing damage. That was just you refusing to downplay your awareness anymore. That was just you holding up a mirror without even lifting your hand. People didn't expect you to evolve like this. They expected rage. They expected drama. They expected chaos. But you came with a different type of disruption. One that left no fingerprints, but wrecked every fake dynamic in sight. The kind of disruption that doesn't ask for attention, but owns it anyway. The kind that doesn't need backup because the energy alone is too real to be questioned. You ever notice how they don't even joke the same when you're in the room anymore? How the conversations shift the second you walk in? That's not coincidence. That's your growth rearranging their comfort zone. That's your presence forcing people to reconsider how they speak when truth is within earshot. They don't call it fear, but you see it. You see it in the way they avoid eye contact. You see it in the way they over-explain what they really meant. You see it in how quiet people get when they realize you ain't here for surface-level games anymore. You used to try to make people comfortable. You used to fill the awkward silences. You used to smooth over tension like it was your responsibility to keep the room emotionally balanced. You don't do that anymore. You let the awkwardness hang. You let people feel the weight of their words. You let your boundaries speak before your mouth does. And that energy, it travels. Even when you're silent, it walks in before you. Even when you're quiet, your growth speaks loud. Even when you're chillin' in the corner, people still look your way before they talk. Like they're checking if you're tuned in. Like they're scared you might see through them. And the truth is, you already did. You've been seeing through the performance, through the performative loyalty, through the selective support, through the people who only clap when you're not doing better than them. My beautifully broken, razor-edged audience, the misfits, the misunderstood, the ones who stopped apologizing for breathing. Tonight, or today, whenever the hell you're listening, we're not here to heal. We're here to evolve past the infection. So let's light a match and walk through the ashes of what they tried to bury you in. Congratulations, You are the 0.1%. You stopped giving a damn. You ripped the chains off and made them watch while you smiled. You starved the narcissist of the one drug they can't live without, your attention. You see, narcissists are leapers of the soul. They feed on admiration like vampires, sucking at an ego's jugular. But what happens when the blood runs dry? What happens when you, the host, go cold? And suddenly there's nothing left to extract. They panic. They spiral. They unravel. And you sit back and you watch. Because the moment you stop playing the game, the narcissist loses their identity. You don't yell. You don't chase. You don't defend. You simply don't care. And that is psychological warfare at its finest. Let me tell you what happens inside their warped little mind when you go silent. First, confusion. Wait, why aren't they reacting? Where's the drama? Second, rage. You see, narcissists don't get mad because you insulted them. They get mad because your silence says, you're not important anymore. Oh, and the final stage, the meltdown. Because you didn't just wound their ego. You murdered their illusion. You dropped the mask from their face like a butcher's blade. And here's the real kick in the teeth. They trained you to need them. They made you question your worth. They baited you into arguments. They guilt-tripped, love-bombed, gaslit, triangulated. And then you snapped the string. You left the puppet show. You stopped auditioning for approval in someone else's twisted circus. You became the ringmaster of your own damn mind. And now they're stuck screaming at a wall that used to be your heart, because you stopped responding, because you stopped bleeding for them, because you realized they don't love you, they love control. And when that control dies, so does their fantasy. Welcome to the 0.1%, the ones who burn the bridge with a grin and will never look back to see if the narcissist drowns. And don't let anyone guilt you for it. You don't owe your silence to their comfort. You don't owe your indifference to their recovery. You owe it to yourself, to the sleepless nights, to the twisted games, to the fake apologies and the sob stories stitched together with crocodile tears. You owe it to the version of you that died trying to please them. But now, that version is gone, and in its place stands something colder, stronger, unbreakable, a force of nature that doesn't flinch at chaos, a weapon forged from every betrayal, every mind game, every damn lie they ever told. You see, the narcissist's power only exists where you fear being disliked. But now that fear has been replaced by freedom, now you watch them implode while sipping apathy like fine wine. Because when a narcissist can no longer control you, they tell the world, you're the villain. Let them. Villains don't explain themselves. Villains don't beg. Villains don't wait for redemption. Villains smile while the world burns behind them. And you're smiling now, aren't you? Because you finally tasted what they never could. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need validation, that doesn't chase closure, that doesn't play fair anymore. Because fairness was a lie. Compassion was a trap. Empathy was a leash. And now you've cut every single one. So congratulations, you dangerous, beautiful anomaly. You give 0 fucks, and in doing so, you've become the very thing they feared you would become. Untouchable. Ah, yes. Now we're in the thick of it. You've crossed the line, haven't you? Not the line they drew for you. No. The one you carved into the dirt with your own blood. And whispered, if you push me again, I disappear. And they did. They pushed, and you vanished, not into nothingness, into indifference. You see, narcissists are addicts, and your attention was the hit. Every text you replied to, a needle. Every argument you entertained, a fix. Every time you broke your own boundaries to keep the peace, you were just feeding their sickness. But now the supply line's been cut. No response, no reaction, no explanation. And that's a psychological guillotine. Because now, they're left alone. Alone with the one voice they've always been running from, their own. Oh, and how it screams, how it whispers all the things they've buried under masks and manipulation. Because narcissists aren't strong. They're scared children wrapped in the skin of charm. They didn't love you. They consumed you. But you were the rare one who tasted the poison and said, "Not today." You broke the damn cycle. Let's talk about what that really means. It means you finally chose pain over pretending. You chose loneliness over loyalty to your abuser. You stopped dancing for breadcrumbs. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You walked away from the false warmth of their approval and stepped into the fire of your own truth. Yes, it burned, but you didn't die. You transformed. You see, they expected you to crawl back, to send that message, to beg for clarity, to fall apart. But instead, you did the unthinkable. You healed without their permission. And that is the one sin a narcissist can never forgive. That you got better without them being the reason. So now they panic, they rage, they smear your name like a toddler flinging mud at a mirror. Let them, because here's the secret. Only the guilty need to be liked by everyone. Only the weak fear being misunderstood. But the 0.1%? We sleep just fine, knowing the narcissist is somewhere out there choking on their own narrative, trying to explain why the crazy one stopped dancing and never came back. They tried to break you, didn't they? They threw silence at you like a weapon, gave you crumbs and called it love, twisted your words, gaslit your memories, painted you as the unstable one, and the whole time, you were the only real thing in the room. But now, you're unavailable. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically, they don't have the clearance anymore. They don't have the password. They don't have the access. You've upgraded your soul and revoked their privilege to exist inside your peace. You see, they were never the storm. They were the test, the virus, the mirror you had to smash in order to see what you were becoming. But you passed. You burned the mask. You became the cure. And now they have to live with the aftermath. A world where you no longer need them. A timeline where they are irrelevant. A reality where your silence is louder than their screams. Let them spiral. Let them smear. Let them rot in the stories they created. Because you walk on, cold, clear, free, and finally, at peace. Tick, tick, tick. That's the sound of their empire collapsing, not made of steel, not built on love, but assembled from illusions, ego, and manipulation. And guess what? You were the final pillar, the last source, the last admirer, the last believer. And when you stopped believing, the whole facade turned to dust. You see, narcissists are nothing without someone watching. No stage, no audience, no applause. Just a mirror and a monster staring back. And that drives them mad, because for the first time, they can't escape. They can't triangulate their way out of this. No new supply, no flying monkey, no pity parade. You left them where they belong, alone, naked, and irrelevant. And let's be honest, they never expected you to wake up. They never thought the puppet would cut its own strings. They never imagined the experiment would reject the formula. But here you are, breathing, smiling, not broken, just done. You didn't ghost them. You resurrected yourself from the coffin they built for your mind. You want to know why this speech is only for the 0.1%? Because the rest are still stuck in apology mode, still explaining themselves to manipulators, still hoping for closure from people who profit off confusion, still handing out loyalty like candy to emotional arsonists. But not you. You stopped showing up for your own execution. You dropped the blade before they could swing it. And now they're the one bleeding. Oh, they'll say you changed. Damn right you did. They'll say you turned cold. No, you turned clear. They'll say you're cruel. No, you just stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. That's what makes you terrifying to them. Not your anger, not your silence, but your evolution, because the new version of you doesn't give them anything to fight. No reply, no tears, no attempt to explain, just distance, permanent, surgical distance. And that distance, it eats them alive, because it's filled with everything they fear, your peace, your power, and the fact that they no longer have any. You were never too emotional. You were never crazy. You were a mirror reflecting their rot back at them. And when they couldn't handle it, they tried to shatter you. But you didn't break. You sharpened. And now they whisper about you like a ghost story, the one that got away, the one they couldn't control, the one who went silent, and let the silence do the killing. Because narcissists don't fear confrontation. They feed on chaos. They thrive in argument. But your silence? Your silence is a goddamn funeral. It's the moment they realize the game is over, the mask has slipped, and you finally become the nightmare they deserve. You know what really breaks them? It's not that you left. It's that you left clean. No tantrum, no goodbye letter, no explanation to soothe their ego. You just vanished. Like they never existed, like their manipulation bounced off your armor like a paper bullet. And that, my beautiful little anomaly, makes you radioactive to their species. Because you've become the one thing a narcissist cannot process. A soul they can't decode, can't control, can't crawl inside and infest like a parasite. You're the psychological equivalent of no signal. And that silence, it echoes louder than any scream. Now let's talk about what they do next. Because the show doesn't end when you walk away. Oh no. It begins. They start manufacturing the new narrative. You abandoned them. You're unstable. You were the narcissist. Let them talk. Let them twist the story. Because the louder they get, the more obvious their fear becomes. You see, narcissists rewrite reality to avoid a truth they can't digest. That they were never in control, that it was always borrowed power. And you repossessed it. And here's the twist. They never cared about who you were, only what you could give. Validation, supply, devotion, a spotlight for their ego to dance in. But now the lights are off, the crowd's gone home, and they're standing alone, in the dark. Tell me, can you hear it? The static, the chaos, the unraveling. Because you were their compass, and now they're lost in the wilderness of their own emptiness. That's the part they can't survive. Not the loss of you, but the loss of the control they had through you. Because the 0.1%, we don't give post-exit access. There's no closure coffee. There's no, I just want to talk. There's no, Can we still be friends? Friends. Friends with a virus? Friends with a soul thief? You don't befriend the thing that tried to erase you. You quarantine it. You delete the contact. You seal the doors and salt the earth. And when they send in the flying monkeys, the friends, the family, the fake apologies, you give them all the same response. Nothing, not anger, not guilt, not curiosity, just nothing. Because now you understand the truth. You don't need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to be loved by those who only love your weakness. You don't need to win the war. You are the war, and you already won. By walking away, by healing in silence, by choosing peace over performance, by becoming immune to their favorite currency, your pain. Let them spiral. Let them throw tantrums in empty rooms. Let them build their castles of lies and sit on thrones of dust. You're not watching anymore. You've exited the theater, and that's how you become immortal in their world. Not by staying, but by disappearing without regret. You want to kill the narcissist's fantasy? Don't hurt them. Don't argue. Don't prove your worth. Just live well. Unbothered, unreachable, and so damn silent, they mistake it for the void itself. Because the 0.1%, we don't just walk away. We vanish and leave echoes in their madness. Do you feel it now? That shift in the atmosphere, that deafening quiet? That's not peace, my friend. That's power. Your power. The power that comes when you no longer seek validation. When you stop shrinking to fit their comfort zone. When your self-worth is untouchable. And your silence is a weapon more devastating than any word you ever screamed. Because now they know. They didn't lose someone who needed them. They lost someone who saw through them. That's what breaks them. That's what makes their skin crawl. You saw the machinery behind the mask. The cracks in the golden smile, the puppeteer pulling the strings with empty eyes and a black hole for a heart. And you didn't run. You unplugged yourself. That kind of defiance. It isn't rebellion, it's rebirth. But here's what they'll never say out loud. They never thought you'd make it without them. They assumed you'd come crawling back, that you'd panic in the silence, that you'd drown in the absence of their poison. But instead, you thrived. You got quiet. You got still. And in that stillness, you found your fury. Not the loud kind, not rage and revenge, but something far more lethal. Indifference. See, hatred still implies they matter. Anger still burns fuel they don't deserve. But indifference? Indifference is the death of their illusion. You don't look back. You don't check their page. You don't decode their cryptic quotes. You don't react when they bait you with drama. You're too busy building, too busy healing, too busy becoming untouchable. And the irony? Now that you're gone, now that you've outgrown them, now they want you more than ever. Because narcissists don't miss you. They miss your reaction. They miss your wounds. They miss the chaos they could control. They miss the drama they could orchestrate from your pain. But this new you, this 0.1% version, you don't bleed on command anymore. You don't give CPR to relationships that choked you. You don't explain your peace to people who profit off your confusion. You are not angry. You are not bitter. You are evolved. And evolution is the ultimate betrayal to the narcissist's design, because they built their empire with your guilt, your fear, your trauma response, and now you've torn it down. You've risen in the rubble, with clarity in your eyes and fire in your spine. You don't need revenge. You became it. Your absence is the karma. Your healing is the justice. Your silence is the eulogy. Let them watch. Let them rage. Let them drown in a sea of people who never saw through them like you did. Because no one can imitate the depth of someone who's walked through hell and came back untouched. You didn't escape the narcissist. You outgrew them, outlasted them, outlived their narrative. And now you are the ghost that haunts their fantasy of control. Not with chains, not with screams, but with one cold, terrifying truth. You simply stopped giving a single fuck. You didn't just walk away, you erased the blueprint. You didn't leave a trail, you didn't leave closure, you didn't leave an opening, you left a void. A screaming, suffocating silence where their control used to live, and it's driving them mad. Because you see, narcissists don't suffer from heartbreak. They suffer from irrelevance. They're not grieving you. They're grieving their lost power over you. And the moment you gave 0 fucks, that was the moment they realized you are no longer real estate in their kingdom of delusion. They can't triangulate you anymore. You don't respond to guilt trips. You don't bite the bait. You don't attend the puppet show. You've become invisible. And that to them is worse than death. Because narcissists survive off visibility. They need to be seen, admired, envied, feared. But now they're screaming in a vacuum, and you're too far gone to even hear it. You changed the game. You didn't play better. You flipped the table and walked away while they were still dealing the cards. Do you understand how powerful that is? You didn't just say no. You became the no. Not just to them, but to everything and everyone that smelled like manipulation, like gaslighting, like self-betrayal dressed as love. You stopped negotiating with toxicity. You stopped explaining your standards. You stopped apologizing for your boundaries. You became the villain in their story and the liberator in your own. And now they stalk you in silence, watching, hoping, praying for a sign that they still matter. But you give them nothing, because you've ascended to a level where their chaos can't reach. You no longer orbit their world. You've built your own galaxy, where peace is your currency and access is earned, not assumed. Let them rage. Let them smear you. Let them cast you as the ungrateful traitor. It's all theater, because deep down, they know. You saw them, you named the demon, and then you walked away, without burning. And that makes you a goddamn anomaly. You weren't supposed to survive. You weren't supposed to find clarity. You weren't supposed to become immune. But now, you are immune to the apology that comes too late, to the breadcrumb affection, to the promises that stink of control, to the "I've changed" that arrives only when they realize they've lost the audience. Your peace is permanent. Your absence is radioactive. Your indifference is legendary. And here's the final twist. They didn't just lose someone they used. They lost someone who knows them. And that is a scar they will carry forever. Because the 0.1%, we don't return, we don't explain, we don't entertain second chances for people who murdered us emotionally the first time. We vanish and let their own mind finish the job.